Hello everyone, this is Serious Trivia, and today we're concluding the Rise and Fall of Gongsun Zan lore series with episode 7, titled A Fiery End. Now last time we ended as Gongsun Zan's decision to kill Liu Yu through the Imperial Envoy backfired almost immediately, as the North rose up to avenge Liu Yu's death and contest his rule. As nomadic relationship thrived under Liu Yu, the nomadic tribes were the first one to strike, as the Xianbei quickly took out Xingju, who was Gongsun Zan's appointed lieutenant of Wuhuan. Then teaming up with a former Liu Yu officer in Xianyu Fu at the Yuyang Commandery, the avenging forces slaughtered Gongsun Zan's appointed administrator in Zhoudan, along with his 4,000 garrison troops. Following their successful takeover of the Yuyang Commandery, the avenging forces appointed Yan Rou, who was a Han captive turned leader of the Xianbei, to become the next lieutenant of the Wuhuan, as 7,000 Wuhuan riders rode south to bring back Liu Yu's son Liu He to the north, as Yuan Shao wisely used this opportunity to break his imperial truce with Gongsun Zan, releasing not only Liu He from his house arrest to become the figurehead of the avenging force. Yuan Shao also sent his general Chu Yi along with troops to support the cause. Altogether, the avenging forces totaled almost 100,000 strong by this point, and compared to Liu Yu's 100,000 force, this group was not filled with inexperienced conscripts, as they included many nomadic horsemen, battle-tested garrison troops that were loyal to Liu Yu, and Yuan Shao's army. So when Gongsun Zan rallied to meet them at the Battle of Baoqiu, the result would be a one-sided slaughter, as Gongsun Zan will lose more than 20,000 men in this battle alone, as he would be forced to retreat back to his stronghold at Yijing and dig in. Adding to Gongsun Zan's defeat at the Battle of Baoqiu, more and more people became emboldened to strike out at him, as his administrators in Dai, Guangyang, Shanggu, and Youbeiping would all come under attack in 195, and very soon, Gongsun Zan lost all control of the north, as he held on for dear life at Yijing, with Yuan Shao's general Chu Yi besieging him. But with plenty of supplies inside Yijing, Gongsun Zan would hold on for almost 2 years, as eventually Chu Yi's forces would run out of food first, and was ultimately forced to retreat. During the retreat, Gongsun Zan would strike out and inflict quite a bit of casualties onto Chu Yi's forces, but overall, by this point in 197, Gongsun Zan had lost much of the north and lost his mind, as for the next year, instead of campaigning to regain his lost territories, he decided to stay put at Yijing, where he started to construct multiple fortresses separated by more than 10 moats. More food was stockpiled as he moved into a central fortress, which was constructed with iron gates. Inside this fortress were only his wife and concubines, as all male over the age of 7 were forbidden to enter. And the only way for Gongsun Zan to relay messages out to his men was through a team of elderly women who were selected for their booming voices, as Gongsun Zan's command were shouted out to his troops outside by these elderly women. In 198, Yuan Shao would try to reach out to Gongsun Zan with a peace offering in a letter, but Gongsun Zan did not even bother to respond, as he continued to build his fortresses at Yijing. So in late 198, Yuan Shao, who had already united much of the north under his banner by this point, would arrive at Yijing with an army that Gongsun Zan simply cannot contend with, as sieges were set up against Gongsun Zan's many fortresses. Yet when one of the outer fortresses came under attack and needed help, Gongsun Zan commanded the other fortresses to remain inside, as he argued that rescuing them would set a bad example for all the other fortresses, as the troops might not fight as hard if they knew that help was always going to come. Clearly disillusional at this point, Gongsun Zan's decision ended up driving scores of his men into surrendering to Yuan Shao, as the outer ring of fortresses quickly fell. But still defended by some of his most loyal men, Gongsun Zan started to formulate a plan to counterattack. First, he sent his son Gongsun Xu to ask Zhang Yan of the Black Mountain Bandits for reinforcements. Then, as they awaited for the reinforcement to come, Gongsun Zan wanted to take a smaller force to break out the encirclement and try to take a position behind Yuan Shao's forces so that he can harass their supply lines. But his advisor, Guan Jing, strongly opposed this plan, arguing that their few remaining troops are loyal only to Gongsun Zan. Therefore, if the general himself decides to leave them behind here at Yijing, the morale would plummet, and the most likely result would be a massive surrender. Hearing this, Gongsun Zan scratched his plan of breaking out of the encirclement, as they would all patiently wait for his son's return with the Black Mountain Bandit reinforcement. Now, Zhang Yan of the Black Mountain Bandits have been fighting against Yuan Shao for almost as long as Gongsun Zan has, and in the face of a common foe, the Black Mountain Bandits would answer, as Gongsun Xu would return with an army of 100,000 strong to rescue his father. But before the reinforcement would arrive at Yijing, Gongsun Zan would write a letter to his son, asking him to come ahead of the rest of the reinforcement with 5,000 cavalry to first help break Yuan Shao's siege as supply was starting to run low. Unfortunately, this letter would never make it to Gongsun Xu, as Yuan Shao's men would manage to intercept it and kill the messenger. Even worse, the letter instructed Gongsun Xu to use torches for signaling for his arrival. And at that point, Gongsun Zan would then charge out with his remaining forces to help break Yuan Shao's siege together. Learning this, Yuan Shao would disguise a portion of his troops as Gongsun Zan's long-awaited reinforcement and arm them all with torches so that they could lure Gongsun Zan's remaining troops out of the fortress and into a trap. And it worked like a charm, as Gongsun Zan saw the torches and immediately charged out with his remaining force. But instead of seeing his son and help, he fell right into Yuan Shao's ambush, as Gongsun Zan's forces would be decimated outside of their fortress. Gongsun Zan and a few men would eventually fight their way back to the fortress, but by that time, all hope was gone, as Gongsun Zan probably believed that his son was dead and that the reinforcement were already defeated, which is why Yuan Shao ended up with the intel to ambush them outside. And with most of his defender now dead in the ambush outside, there was no one to stop Yuan Shao's forces from digging tunnels from under the moat to reach his central fortress. Even though the central fortress gates were made of iron, Yuan Shao's men would soon collapse the foundation of the fortress by sapping underneath, causing the entire fortress to crumble. And with his fortress literally crashing down in front of his eyes, Gongsun Zan decided to end things on his own terms, as he would first kill his sisters, his wife, and his many concubines, who all lived with him inside his fortress, before setting himself on fire. Yet before he burned away completely to dust, Yuan Shao's men would rush in and take his head, as his head would eventually make its way to the new capital city of Xucheng for all to see. Some of his more loyal officers, such as Tian Kai and Guan Jing, would make a suicidal charge into Yuan Shao's forces after seeing the collapse of the central fortress, as they would all perish soon after. Gongsun Zan's son, Gongsun Xu, would eventually arrive too late with the reinforcements, as the battle was already over, and they would retreat back into the Black Mountains. And for reasons unrecorded at a future date, Gongsun Xu would eventually get into a conflict with the Tuge tribes in the Bin province and be killed, thus ending Gongsun Zan's line. And with that, our lore series comes to an end, as Gongsun Zan would die in March of 199 after fighting against Yuan Shao on and off for more than 8 years. A warlord through and through, Gongsun Zan's bravery and eagerness to fight contributed much to his rise from a discarded son in a minor gentry clan to becoming a reputable frontier commander. Yet it is also this same bloodthirst that would contribute to his fall, as ambition often knows no bound. So hopefully you all have enjoyed this episode and series enough to hit that like button to help support the channel, and I'll see you all next time. Bye!